Hey everyone, welcome back to the story of how and why I got this C4 Corvette. I'm just going to continue from right where I left off in the previous video. Now this is where things are going to get a little personal. This car is a 1994. 1994, I was just a kid back then. 1994 was the year my own dad was diagnosed with cancer and passed away pretty quickly afterwards. My wife and I, ever since we met, we've always likened the impact of her aunt on her life to the impact of my dad on mine. And even though she never got to meet my dad, I never got to meet her aunt, they have both been just highly inspirational and influential figures in our lives, individually and as a family. We actually gave our son, his middle name was named after my dad, and our daughter's middle name was named after her aunt. Now my dad wasn't particularly into cars by any means, but as a car enthusiast myself, I can't help but recognize that there's a very special bond that can take place between a father and a son over a car. And as I got older myself, I started to be more and more attracted to older cars and classic cars. And I think these cars they've stood the test of time. Their owners tend to be so much more down to earth. And they just have so many more interesting stories behind them. And through all these years of doing my exotic car YouTube channel, I've crossed paths with all kinds of cars with cool stories. You know, cars that have been owned by celebrities, cars that were wrecked and brought back to life, cars that starred in films, cars that were stolen or used in criminal schemes, you name it. But at the end of the day, the stories that stand out to me the most are always those in which a car has been kept in the same family, passed down from one generation to another. A lot of times, a father and a son, or maybe a grandpa or an uncle would work on a car together, you know, fix it up, modify it, take it out to shows, and go on drives, and just bond through that. You know, a lot of times, the original owner of the car has already passed on, and the family decided to keep the car just as a precious and priceless memory. I can't help but wish my dad were around when I was a kid growing up, so he could teach me to, you know, be a man, fix things up. We could enjoy hobbies together, you know, like a good father and a good son should. Now I know that can never happen since I can't go back and change the past. But what I also knew was that this Corvette was my one and only opportunity to own a car that I can say has been in the family since new. And one that I can enjoy with my family, with my kids, just as I wish my dad could have done for me. You know, and when the time comes, to pass it down to them and have them continue writing the story long after I'm gone. And this was an opportunity just so close to my heart that I simply couldn't afford to let it slip away. Now with that in mind, I'm actually really thankful this car is not a Ferrari or some other high-end luxury car. Because if that's the case, I probably won't be able to afford to keep it in the family. And if I tried to, my family really should label me a selfish and irresponsible idiot. Ever since my wife and I were talking about planning to get married, I had made it a point to let my car hobby be one that's financially self-sustaining. My exotic car YouTube channel has always been more of a hobby than a business. Never really cared to milk every penny out of it like it seems like most people do nowadays. But I did manage to make enough to cover the cost of me making these videos and going to all these car events. And over the years, little by little, I did save up enough money in that account to cover the cost of getting this car back up and running again. And I do expect to be able to make enough to cover the continued maintenance of this car without having any impact on my family. And plus, this car gives me opportunities to be able to network with other car owners and enthusiasts. And given how little it's worth right now, it's almost certain it's not going to lose any more value. So why did it take me so long to get the car? I had been telling people for years I was going to get a C4 Corvette, and eventually they probably all thought I was lying and just full of talk. The reason was my living situation at the time. Our condo at the time didn't have space to keep an extra car, and cars that were left out on the street overnight or even left outside in the complex were frequently vandalized or broken into. So I knew that bringing a red sports car out there really wouldn't be a smart idea. And it really wouldn't do the car justice, especially given, you know, its history in the family. At that time, the car was safely kept on a private driveway, it was under a cover. My sister-in-law knew I was serious about getting it, and at that time she wasn't in a rush to get rid of it. So we figured it made the most sense to simply leave things the way they were. Let's fast forward a little bit. After my second kid was born, my wife and I decided it was time to start looking for a bigger home. So we started shopping around for a house, and last summer we finally found one. By the grace of God, it's in a great, safe neighborhood. It's got a space on the driveway where I could keep my daily, so I can put the Corvette in the garage. And around that same time, my sister-in-law mentioned she was going to start making plans to get rid of the car soon and wanted to confirm if I was still interested. So I told her, heck yeah. That's when we started really talking about details, and I started shopping for insurance quotes and all that fun stuff. Even up to that point, I really didn't know much about this particular car in detail. All I really knew was it had around 30,000 miles, it's an automatic, it spent its whole life in a reputable family, it was well cared for, but probably needed some mechanical work from sitting outside for so many years. I knew that it was red, and it looked great the last time I saw it, but that was several years ago. Now I know this is not a lot of information to work off of when it comes to getting a car, but given how little these C4s are worth right now and all the personal reasons I mentioned earlier, I figured it was worth taking the risk. And worst case, if the car really was in worse condition than I had expected and it would cost me more than I could afford to get it fixed up without making any compromises, I could just have it towed right here to the garage and just leave it here until I was financially a little better off.